Hey, Night Owls. All I wanted tonight was to talk to you about science and nature, but it looks like I have to quickly explain another regional war first. Pakistan has bombed Kabul. The defense minister says it's all-out war. Look, it's never a good sign when one country is bombing another country's capital. It is an escalation, and we don't know where this goes. But to put it in context, this hasn't been great for a while. There has been fighting along the border for the past week. Pakistan says that the Taliban has been allowing or backing attacks inside Pakistan. Pakistan has been seeing some really awful suicide bombings recently. Now, those have largely been thought to be by the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban. Isn't that the same thing as the Afghan Taliban? No, but you don't want me to go on about this for hours and hours, do you? So just trust me, they are not the same thing. Does that mean that the Afghan Taliban is not backing them, as they say they are not? We don't actually know the truth of that. All we know is one side says you're responsible, the other side says no, we're not, and that is causing tension. And now, all-out war. The other thing that's going on here is that Afghanistan and Pakistan have always been bad neighbors, right? There's always been cross-border tension and fighting, and every time I would go to Afghanistan, you would hear complaints about the meddling. You would hear people saying, look, Pakistan is always trying to meddle in our affairs to turn things to their own benefit. But you would also hear from Pakistan that India was always meddling in Afghan affairs to turn things to their own benefit. And obviously, these are the two great power rivals of the subcontinent. So one of the other important things to keep in mind right now is that India and the Taliban government have been getting closer and closer and closer. So that is really important context here. This has always been a love-hate triangle, and keeping an eye on how that shapes up now will be very, very important. Okay, time for tortoises. Good news. On Floriana Island, there in the Galapagos, there are giant tortoises again. Humans made them go extinct in the 1800s because we are jerks who ate them. Now, scientists, yay, scientists, figured out that the DNA from some giant tortoises at Wolf Volcano on Isabella Island was the same as the extinct tortoises. I don't know how they did that. I don't know how the DNA got from one island to another. I guess love finds a way. But regardless, they have managed to rebuild a juvenile population, and they've now started to transplant them back. So that's kind of a feel-good story about what we are capable of when we set our minds to it. And that brings me to the International Day of the Polar Bear, the iconic creature of the Arctic, the symbol of climate change in a lot of ways, because they are going extinct. We think we'll lose them by 2100. And they are super, super cool. They can swim for 9 days straight. Never try and outswim one. They're actually classed as marine mammals. They can weigh up to 800 kilograms. And they can smell a seal through 3 feet of ice. So basically, if it's you versus a polar bear, you're going to lose. And I say that because they are also adorable if you've ever seen a polar bear cub, but don't try to pet one or its mother will kill you. And it's an important day to try and draw attention to what we can do to preserve their habitat. People across all of the Arctic countries are planning polar bear dips, which is when, if you are not from an Arctic country, people go and they get into really cold water and they swim and they screech and then they come out. And we can say we're doing it for conservation or just because we're all a little nuts. But I don't think it's a bad thing to celebrate the polar bear. We've been talking about the Arctic so much lately with Greenland and Greenland and Greenland that it seems worth mentioning something else about the Arctic, frankly. Also, as much as we talk about how they're going extinct, there's been 2 scientific studies that have come out recently which show something really incredible. Number 1, the polar bears of Svalbard are actually getting fatter. They are getting healthier as the sea ice is shrinking. Now, the hypothesis is that that's because they're getting better at hunting. That, I mean, it's bad news for seals. They're actually getting better at getting in there and getting all the seals who also don't have many places to go. So that's kind of cool, right? They're showing this flexibility and adaptability in how they hunt. And the other study, which comes from the University of East Anglia, I don't know if they have just amazing researchers or amazing PR or both, but they always seem to have these great studies. This other study that came out from them is about gene jumping, which is basically rewriting DNA much faster than we ever thought possible. And polar bears are doing it. They're one of the most threatened creatures, and they are managing to rewrite, for example, how well they are able to withstand heat. Polar bears, great at withstanding the cold, up to minus 40 Celsius, they're fine. Plus 10, they can go into heat stroke. I am the exact opposite. I feel the exact opposite about temperature. But what's interesting is that they are showing that kind of adaptability. It doesn't mean we can let up on trying to make the world a better place. It just means that nature is amazing. Also, polar bears are pretty solitary, but did you know that a group of polar bears is called a celebration? Let's end on that note.